are no longer in it for us. They're in it for them and their supporters, and we go on, and you see that in Luzerne County, and I know we're going to be talking about that. But what really gets me to, my other pet peeve of the day, is how the Democrats continue to take negative terms and try to rename them, Lou. And we talked about that.
Oh.
You have global warming is now climate change. You have the welfare program is now, I think they're calling it economic opportunity. I'm like, it's just, so what really, really bothers me about this stuff, Lou, is that we have a group of individuals, Republicans who won't fight against them, and the Democrats who think that the American people are complete stupid idiots who can be duped and believe anything they tell us. But I think the times are changing, Lou. I think we're starting to question things, and if any example of that is better is Luzerne County, Lou.
Well, certainly we're going to talk about that at the half hour. We have Kathy Dobash that came in, who's going to give us a little information from behind the scenes from what's happening behind the curtain, as they say. But certainly, Michael, talking about names, and I had this on our list. We've had a number of birthdays recently here, certainly the IRS and the war on poverty this past week here, but certainly talking about the Federal Reserve. Now, there's a name that is certainly meant to deceive. And
Yes.
And just to get on that a little bit, because we're certainly going to bring that up, but speaking at a couple of groups this past week, we've certainly followed through with what we said we were going to do with the Independent Gazette, which, by the way, has just come out, and it's going to be hitting the stands, or has been hitting the stands the last few days, and certainly in all the locations, Turkey Hills, they'll all be stocked by today, and you can certainly pick up your January edition of the Independent Gazette pretty much throughout the communities. But that all being said, one of the things, Michael, is with this Federal Reserve stuff, and I'm serious about this. We need to ask our representatives seriously who owns our debt, and I don't think that has to be some kind of conspiracy thing. I called all the United States state reps this past week, certainly Marino, and I have the whole list here. Actually, Representative Haggerty I called, Udechak, Baker, Marino, Cartwright, Barletta, Kanjorski's on the list to call, Casey, Toomey, and there's a reason why Kanjorski is on that list. And being able to talk to some of the chief of staffs and those the individuals that set up these interviews, I let them know what we're calling about. And,
right.
and this is not a gotcha question. And certainly we talked about that at the Patriot Connectors over in Hawley this past week. And the whole idea of this is to try to educate people, because I really don't know. And I don't think anybody else out there knows. And so this is not about a gotcha question. This is really about an educational question. And this is one of the things that we try to do with the Independent Gazette, certainly here on Sanity Check Radio Show. How can it be that we, the people, don't know who owns us? Really, and that's what it comes down to. Who owns our debt? And we're going to be reaching out to the media, certainly our legislators, to start talking about this. Let's have a real conversation. How do they get paid? How much money does the Federal Reserve make? Who owns it? Who gets that money? And I think that is really, really important. And I don't think this is something that should be an off topic or a topic that we're afraid to talk about. But it's really amazing. Certainly I wrote down in my notes today, when people say who owns our debt, most people say China. China owns our debt. China owns our debt. But of course, that's what we're being told by the controlled media, and certainly our state-run schools. Yes, our state-run schools. And is there an agenda? And why do we not know who owns us? And we have to get this out there. Certainly.
Lou,
go ahead. I'm sorry, Michael.
You're absolutely right, Lou. And these points are so valid because, and I was thinking of the China thing myself. That's always the idea. China, China, China. But in reality, we know that, yes, we owe China money. But the whole thing is the Federal Reserve. And as you mentioned earlier, that it's named in such a way that we believe it's part of the federal government, that the government owns it, we the people own this. But in reality, we know that's not true. So the question is, as you brought up, was who does own it? Who's behind it? Why is there such secrecy? Why aren't we allowed to go to Fort Knox and do inventory on that? Why can't we go and audit the Fed? It's because it's a huge power grab, and I think it's almost there's fear within Washington amongst our senators and representatives not even to bring the topic up. I look at it, so many of our candidates in the past for president, it's never ever a topic, Lou. And I begin to wonder, is it out of their ignorance or is it out of their fear, Lou, that they're not going to bring the topic up?
And that's what we don't want, is out of fear that they don't know. Because I honestly don't know. I really don't. If anybody out there can shed a little bit more light on this. Michael, we talked just before we got on air today about Herman Cain. And yet he was in the debates. He was on the debate stage. People that might wanted to bring this up, and certainly we're going to continue over the next course of the next few weeks, talk about this phony debate commission that we have, and working hand in hand with this media to keep this stuff out of the news. Herman Cain was the president, I believe, of one of the Federal Reserves, either Kansas City or St. Louis. I mean, we need to start asking these people, how do they get paid? Where's their money? How does this whole banking system work? Because it controls everything we do. It controls the cost of our homes. It controls the cost that we pay for a vehicle. And it's just amazing to me that we don't know, and I don't want it out of fear. And when I spoke with some of these offices, I let them know what we're asking for. And I have to tell you, Pat Toomey's office got right back to us. Barletta's office we talked to at length. And great conversation. I said, listen, this is, I don't think you're going to be able to give us an answer. And certainly when we write it up this next time, we have to make sure that when we do write it up in our newspapers and put this out, that the ones that get back to us, and we have to make sure it's not written in a way that it looks like they're ignorant, and the ones that didn't get back to us are the smart ones, because the ones that didn't get back to us are the ones that do not want you, the people out there, to know what's going on. Marino's office was another one that got right back, and I got to thank him for that. I really do, and I don't mind, we have to have these conversations. But if anybody knows, and I know X is coming on later, maybe we could talk a little bit more about it. But I don't know how this whole system works. But I for some reason, I think there's something rotten in Denmark, as they say.
There is, Lou. And, if we look at historically, back in 21, Thomas Edison smelled the rat. As some of our listeners may not know, the Fed was reinstated in 1913. And Edison's like, this is just bad economics. So he started to create some ideas of his own. And certainly we know where Henry Ford was with the Feds. He absolutely disagreed with them, and they sort of teamed up. And, now decades later, there's a form of currency known as the Bitcoin, I believe, and John may know more about this. But the whole reason I'm saying this is that it was recognized early on, Lou, that the Federal Reserve was a real issue for good economics for this nation. But as much influence as Edison had, he was quickly quieted by the paid-off media, even 100 years ago, Lou, to make sure that this story never gained any traction. So as soon as that's done, Lou, as soon as I see things like that and hear about things like that, I know that these are questions that need to be asked even more so than I even thought before.
And like I said, Michael, from here on out, and we're certainly encouraging other media, people that go to these meetings when they have their representatives come, don't be afraid to ask that question. We really can't be afraid, and we don't want fear or ignorance, because certainly it's been instilled in all of us that somehow you ask these questions why would you ask that question? Well, why I would ask that question is because it has more influence on what is going on with our debt than anything else. I mean, in the news, whether it's, cutting food stamps and cutting this, and hey, wait a minute. The biggest driver of this is the Federal Reserve. And we need to be able to get this information out there. And I really do want to know who owns the Fed. Who are these people behind the curtain, pulling the strings? And so anyway, I think that's real important. I think we got that point across for sure. Yeah. Certainly, I don't want to talk too much about Christie today, but I do want to just bring this up because before we go to break, we could certainly get some of this stuff in. I got to tell you, Michael, when I had my transport company in New Jersey, sometimes we would cross over the GW, the George Washington Bridge, 3 times a day. I'm listening to some of these stories, 6 hours. 6 hours to cross the bridge. Can you imagine sitting there? I mean, trying to get to work and all these other things.
Probably quicker than usual.
I mean, it is unreal. And yet, for me, once again, it's the force of government. No matter what they do, this bullying government, whether they're forcing you to pay taxes, whether they, forced health care. We are a nation of laws, please. We have to start really looking at this. I love it when people, it's the law. We're a nation of laws. Yeah, it's a nation of laws as long as you can afford a good lawyer. Then you have a nation of laws. But, but this whole Christie thing, what really got to me, I was listening to some of the things, and no matter where you turned it, Christie was on this thing. Yep. And I heard the Media Research Center put something out. 17 times more airtime was devoted to Christie than for 6 months on the total IRS. Are you kidding me? The whole IRS scandal? What difference does it make? There's another. What difference does it make? Are you kidding me? We had United States citizens killed, and we have this Clinton come on. What difference does it make? And yet 17 times more media. And so once again, to me, the story is the phony media. And what we're trying to do here, and a lot of people around the country are seeing this. They're trying to grow alternative medias, and certainly we love the opportunity to be here on 94.3 FM to be able to, like I say, spout off each morning. And I just wanted to mention, too, it's 888, again, 577-4487 if you want to join in on the conversation, Michael. But I think it's real important that, and we always do, just point out the fact that this media is they're driving the agenda. It's agenda-driven media. And I know more and more people, and certainly people that listen to this show and a lot of talk shows, but we need to make sure that people on the street, the people that are not necessarily listening to talk show or conservative talk shows, are also getting the message, or at least being aware. And that's one of the reasons why I'm looking forward to the next edition already of the Independent Gazette, when we do talk a little bit about the Federal Reserve and some of those issues.
And again, these are issues, and I think we've heard before, that you normally don't hear about on other channels or on those shows. And these are things that are so important. And I think the fact that it just gets looked over, Lou, because, and I want people to realize how important when we talk about different issues, and you go back to the Fed and how the elderly are losing out on their opportunity because they always relied on good interest rates to be able to pay, on CDs, etc. But our media, and I really think we just keep going back to that, is really the issue. If we can get our media straight to be an honest media that will be able to insist on answers to these questions. And yet, I keep wondering when the American people, or are they starting to realize that this media is completely out there? I mean, you look at Chris Carney's trying to hide himself through a beard now. You know what I mean? So, it really, really is disturbing to me that as we get down this road of having our media with the newspaper, that how disturbing it is, just through my experience, Lou, to see the lies and the way the situations in these press conferences that are so designed that it completely gives you an alternate point of view, or they won't allow the alternate point of view at these press meetings. And both the Republicans and the Democrats do that, Lou. So this is what we as American people have to insist on really good media to be able to expose the lies that we little by little get out, or sometimes never get out, Lou. So that's why I'm very proud of what we're doing with the Independent Gazette. And I really think that there is going to be traction on any type of alternative media. And we're seeing that right through the Internet now, Lou, where so many of our youth are going to the Internet for their information, not the regular news. And I think that's a good thing.
Well, one of the things, Michael, that you just brought up, obviously, is we need a free and independent press, but we also need free and equal elections. Those are the two cornerstones of really changing what is going on. And if you remember last week, Gary from Mill City called, and he said, you have to start naming names. And we need to start doing that. Just this past week, we're following up on that free and equal elections. And I was supposed to have a meeting with Senator Smucker out of Lancaster, okay?
Yep.
And he is the one that is holding this up in the government committee. So I called Baker, and I'm waiting for that phone call. And we also brought that up up in Hawley this past week, that individuals need to start calling these representatives and saying, wait a minute, this is not right. What's going on? I felt like we have been smuckered because he once again blew us off I've had 2 meetings with this guy, and he blew me off twice. And this is with interviews with us. And it's a long trip down there. It's a 3-hour trip. I mean, planning my day, trying to get down there at the last minute, you get a phone call. Oh, Senator Smucker can't make it again. Guess what, Smucker? I'm down there Monday morning when you're in office, and I'm going to sit in your office until we get, or I'm going to at least do my best to have a face-to-face and say, wait a minute, do you believe or do you not believe in free and equal elections? We're going to take a break. When we come back, we got the lines filled up, Michael. We got X on the line. We got Kathy Dobash in studio. We got all kinds of stuff going on.
If you've been let down by the political class, then you're looking for Sanity Check Saturday mornings on 94.3 FM, The Talker.
This is X-Files. This sounds like the X-Files music, and it is. Michael, we're doing this for a reason. Welcome back, 94.3 FM, The Talker. Michael, this past week, we just started putting out some news blast and email blast, and we're certainly starting to promote Sanity Check each and every week. And if you want to get on those lists, get in touch with us, and certainly you go to Muckraker News, and there's going to be we'll make sure that you get updates each and every week. Michael, we have some exciting things that I would like to let our audience know about. Sometime this month, we're going to launch into doing a regular news blast coming out of Muckraker News, and certainly we're going to do a blast. What we talk about on our radio show here, sometimes it's very difficult for people that want to listen to the whole hour. So what we're doing right now is we're cutting them down into little chunks, and we're putting it out there. And if you want to get on that list, we're more than happy to send it to you. But we're also doing an X-Files. We're going to do an X-Files blast. And, of course, that will be all about what Mr. X talks about. Good morning, Mr. X.
Morning, gentlemen.
So, how's it going?
Not too bad. I put out an article this week in Breitbart, was able to host it, that I talked about the fact that the U.S. drone program sometime within the last year has killed more innocent people than the number of American citizens killed on 9/11. And this is, from the data that we've been able to retrieve. The problem is the government is keeping a lot of wraps on all of these programs, specifically because the numbers are so high. And from their own internal documents, they're only killing about 2% of the deaths, according to their own numbers, are high-value targets. So we're, in order to kill one bad guy, we're essentially killing possibly over 30 innocent people, which, of course, is going to inflame, look, if you're a peaceful person and you're in Pakistan and nobody's bothering you, and then suddenly you wake up and in order to kill a terrorist that's driving down the road, your wife and children maybe get killed in collateral damage, what would you do? What would we be doing in the United States if, in order to stop the Mexican drug cartels operating within the United States, the government of Mexico started assassinating people in Houston, Texas, or in San Antonio with a drone that unfortunately might have killed some other American? The reaction of people would be blood vengeance. Not everybody, but a certain percentage would. And essentially, our drone program has now replaced a lot of the recruiting efforts, and this is what's fueling a lot of this Al-Qaeda rise across, because they keep seeing the pictures in their recruiting tools of, this innocent person was killed in a video that they'll show on the internet, and now suddenly the Middle East now has this concept called blowback, which not now, maybe in a 5 years from now, that person will grow up. Maybe he's 18, 15 or something, and he's going to want vengeance for the death of his mother or his brother or his sister. So this program is really actually blowing up on us, despite what the administration, both Bush and primarily Obama, have done.
Well, we've talked about that all the time, and certainly we've tried to raise awareness of this. Is that, just recently we saw that wedding party where 14 people or something were killed, and what would you do, Michael? We say this all the time. I'd be livid. I'd do whatever I had to do, and not only that, it is this blowback, and you are breeding the contempt of what the United States is supposedly stands for when we start blowing up innocents. I mean, Michael, I've used this term, and I know it probably bothers people, but, life begins at conception and ends in Iraq. I mean, we have to start looking at this as Christians. We have to look at it and say, wait a minute. If you value life, how can we just close our eyes to this and just say, okay, well, it's okay indiscriminately to start sending drones over and blowing people up, and they say, well, we're after the bad guys. I mean, we really do have to look at this policy.
We do, and I want everybody to remember who got the Nobel Peace Prize. And this was Barack Obama. And what a hypocrisy that we're seeing here. And it's kept quiet. And again, I think it's arguable that this is probably the most, at least secretive administration I know since I can remember. And so we're going to say one thing, and this is what you see in government, not just Barack Obama, but, they're saying one thing and doing another thing, and then getting awarded for the lies. And this is, again, we go right back to the media, but this administration is continuing to use the same tactics, saying that there are noble reasons. In reality, it's just giving us the opposite result, and there's certainly anything from noble, folks.
And the drones program's expanding itself. We're not just operating in Iraq like we used to. We're not just operating in Afghanistan like we used to. We're now into Pakistan. We're into Yemen. There's reason to believe that the drone program has moved into parts of Africa right now that up until before, most Americans, wait a minute, so we're using drones in, some of these African countries that probably people can't even point out on a map, which now sets us up. But this kind of goes back in, it ties into the Chris Christie, it ties into having your guest on, Lou, and that is the way an effective government can work relies heavily on the ability of the public to know what's going on so that they can correct for the people in office that are not doing the right thing. Whereas the lack of transparency is what is causing much of our bad government programs, because people can hide and commit their crimes and omissions
in secrecy
beyond the eyes of the public, which, again, if they're kept in the dark, will not put in a corrective mechanism, i.e. voting them out of office, to make the world a better place.
Yeah, cockroaches don't like light. That's for sure. And certainly that's what we need to do. And we're trying to do this for sure. And once again, if you want to get involved with the Independent Gazette and what we're doing here, please do. Certainly, once again, and I'll throw this out. It was just because that we were up there, and the second Thursday of every month, Patriot Connectors up in Hawley. But a number of them are going to start writing for us, Michael. They're going to start doing their own investigative work. These are the people. This. If you're listening to us right now, this is how you could change your community. We went to a number of different, I guess, communities this past week. John doesn't have his headphones on, but he went down to a place down by Jim Thorpe, and I don't have the name right in front of me. But, these people started laughing. They thought it was a joke. They're not going to think it's a joke when we're down there filming their town halls and what's going on, because it's happening in all the little communities throughout Lackawanna, Luzerne County, Wyoming County, all communities, probably within the United States. But what you could do as a citizen, if you're listening to what's going on, contact us. We'll get you a press pass. Go to your little town hall and start asking the questions, because, Bob Butts talks about this all the time. There is a lack of ethics. And we see even with the Christie thing, once people start getting power, it really changes everything. Once you start throwing money and power around, it changes people who they are. I mean, why would somebody go out and shut down the George Washington Bridge? Are you kidding me? I don't know how many people are familiar with that, but it's the busiest bridge in the United States. I mean, it is the disaster. I mean, crossing
Even on
the
a good
cross.
day, it's a bad day.
X, I know you're
right.
familiar with that. You get onto the cross Bronx. It's always a shoot, man. You never know whether you're gonna. You never know. How long it's going to take. To get over this thing. It can ruin your whole day if you're going to, business meetings or you're meeting people or, God forbid you have to get to the hospital, do some other things. But once again, we see what happens when people lose their ethics, when they think they are more important than the greater good.
Well, and this is where the transparency would come in, because if if the administration completely opens up its system and its emails and so forth like that, then there's not a problem. And any justification that you can give for why something needs to be kept secret, I can give you 100 reasons why it shouldn't be. But the largest one, again, is it stops corruption.
It does. What were you going to say, Michael?
No, I was going to say, to our listeners, Lou, so many of these politicians are really truly like the wizard behind the curtain. They act all powerful and tough, but, when you actually expose them, you realize how little they are. How ineffective they can be once they have to answer the truth. And I look at a senator from Pennsylvania, Mike Fulmer, who's probably one of my heroes in politics today, whose door is always open because he has nothing to hide. You want a meeting with him, he's there for you. But then you have this fellow who you're trying to track down, Smucker, he's on the run because he doesn't want to answer the questions, Lou. And this is why when I reference the wizard behind the curtain, when you pull the curtain back, they begin to lose their power. So this is what we have as citizens to be able to change the tide here, to be able to put America back into the hands of the people.
And Michael, let me just
go ahead, X.
Add on to that. You mentioned the phrase "man behind the curtain." That phrase "man behind the curtain" comes from a reference to the Wizard of Oz. Correct. Now, for most people who listen, they think about the Wizard of Oz as a delightful child story. But the reality is the story masks what it was about. In this original story, okay, not the movie.
Now, don't ruin my favorite movie now, X on me.
The story is about monetary policy.
Oh, jeez.
And all of the characters in there represent different elements of society. But the man behind the curtain is those in political power that pull the levers and so forth to distract the public. The reason why they don't want these things coming to light, the reason why public officials don't want to talk, a good number of them, by talking about things and doing interviews that are not controlled, would reveal how ignorant they really are. This is the thing. If there's one thing I've learned from all of the contact I've had with any person in political power, they are no smarter than the average person. There might be a few exceptions to the rule, but the majority of people that I've come in contact with, and I probably, Lou, you could say the same thing, they might have a certain area that they're an expert in, but they're not some sort of a, brainiac Albert Einstein that knows the answer to the problems that are out there. And especially if you can Google some of the YouTube clips of some of the things. I mean, remember, there was that congressman that somehow thought if everybody went to one side of the island, I think this was Okinawa or Guam, the island would topple over. And if you watch it, you can realize this person was actually serious. They actually thought that could happen. It's insane. It's absolutely insane that the number of people in our positions of power that have been elected that actually maybe collectively would qualify for a moron rating on the IQ scale.
Well, at least you didn't ruin my movie too much there, X. I always thought if it was all about if I only had a brain. And now we're going to take a break. When we come back, we have Kathy Dobash. X, stay on the line. We'll talk some more.
Do you want education through discussion? Do you think there's bias in the media? Has the political class let you down? Then join Sanity Check as they expose, inform, and enlighten through the new standard in talk radio. Saturday mornings, 94.3 FM, The Talker.
What would you do with a brain if you had one?
Do? Why, if I had a brain, I could while away the hours, conferring with the flowers, consulting with the rain. And my head I'd be scratching while my thoughts were busy hatching if I only had a brain.
That's what we need. We need some brains. They're picking on me, Michael, here.
Once again, the victim.
Once again, the victim. You're listening to 94.3 FM, The Talker. This is Sanity Check, 888-577-4487. That is 888-577-4487. So anyway, yeah, it would be nice if we were just all a little bit more educated. Michael, today we have Kathy Dobash in the studio, and certainly she's going to talk about a little bit what's happened here in Luzerne County. There was a shakeup, Michael. There was a shakeup with the new elections. The power structure in Luzerne County is, I guess, shook up there, Kathy.
Well, we have a different chairman, and we have a vice chair that has changed seats.
And if I remember correctly, Kathy, you said that the jaws.
Well, I thought, this was my perspective.
Your perspective.
When I took a glance over to my left, I thought our manager's jaw just dropped and stayed open. With the reorganization on county council.
Well, you're shaking it up. That's exactly correct. And Michael, one of the things that we have been talking about certainly is that this party affiliation. We can't always look at them because certainly we look at Harry Haas. And he was in the news this week, and recently he has voted as a Republican, Michael, over the last 2 years to raise taxes not once, but twice. You know as well as I do that he is typically on the side of McGinley and Boback, certainly not something that we would normally do. And yet here this past week, Kathy,
yes,
yourself,
right, have
teamed up with another Democrat. And you're
Brominsky.
Mr. Brominsky and Eileen Sorokas, and then of course the two Urbans and Morelli, and Michael. They are not feeling good in Luzerne County. Now the county council down there is shook up.
The clique has been broken,
and that's it. The clique has been broken. And perhaps, Michael, we'll start looking at a different agenda, Kathy, and certainly you're going to bring some agendas up, right?
Well, yes. The chair was asking for agenda items, so I fired off a few emails, and I sent it to the county email, so I'm going to see in a month if my emails are posted on the website. Well, I'd like to see the budget at least reopened and looked at, although it's a short time to try to find $8 million and try to change that 8% tax hike. That's going to be a big challenge. There's an issue with the tax collectors. They have an appeal in, and that might be resolved. That's being looked at. And I want to have on the agenda at some point 990 information of nonprofits easily accessible and given to council members before voting on contracts, looking at executive salaries and seeing if the money is going to the services and not the pockets of the executives.
How do you like that, Michael? We've been talking about Mr. Boback and yes, absolutely.
Oh, believe me, Mr. Boback's going to have my opinion, and I'm going to talk as long as I want.
Actually, I was actually thinking of. Oh,
you like that?
I know, Michael. This is great.
But I'll do it with a smile. I don't have to shout and scream. I can just sit there and talk and give my opinion and ask questions and want answers.
You know, you talk about transparency, Kathy, and we covered the Lackawanna study commission. Right. On the new home rule. Mary Jo Sheridan is talking about the same thing. She's on that commission. She's saying there's no transparency. And Michael, the roadblocks that are being put up by those that are already in power is absolutely amazing. And I got to tell you, what has happened in Luzerne County? I wasn't necessarily all on board with this county council stuff and the new home rule. But Kathy, by you getting elected, by seeing what Mr. Brominsky does. And Michael, once again, when we look at these parties, we really have to start looking. All the Republicans that went out and pulled that lever for Harry Haas because, Harry Haas is a good Republican. Michael, I got to tell you, you know as well as I do, who would you rather see? You, Mike, you're Tea Party Mike Lacey. Conservative as conservative gets. If you had your choice, are you picking Brzezinski, the Democrat, or Harry Haas, the Republican?
Oh, well, I'm certainly going with Brzezinski. And these are things, Kathy, that
that's why I supported him for vice chair. He fights for transparency. Right. He's not afraid to ask hard questions.
Right.
And he holds his chin up. Right.
Right. This is not a party issue. And this is what really, really inspires me is the fact that those folks who are, and I certainly going to refer to it as arrogance, because that is really
arrogance and elitism.
And elitism. And Harry Haas, and again, Lou, you brought up the point, and I preached it. Harry Haas, in my opinion, is if a Republican is to be known as a conservative, small government, low taxation, Harry Haas does not meet any of those standards to me. Harry Haas is more of a Democrat, and as far as big government, more taxation, doesn't look for other answers, and and comes across as being this wonderful ear-listening man, and he is a good guy. I don't want anybody to think that
exactly. This is not about that.
It's not about his character. It's about his politics. But what bothers me is that when you dress yourself up as being an individual, of being conservative government, and you keep doing the opposite, then it's time to question who Harry Haas is and what he really stands for, Kathy. And I have the respect of Mr. Brzezinski because he appears to me, and has always appeared to me, that he is not after his party's improvement, but he's after the government and Luzerne County's improvement.
It's about living in Luzerne County and experiencing the lifestyles here and fighting to make it better. That's what it's about. It's not about the party you belong to.
Yeah. Right.
And
Kathy, the self-fulfilling attitude that I see amongst, as you said, the elitists, is really what we as the American people, particularly those in Luzerne County, have to open up and take a look at. These people have been saying they're representing your best interest. And, Kathy, I cannot see how they've been representing the people's best interest.
Right. Well, getting back to some agenda items, we have this financial computer system called a New World System. So one thing I want to ask for is that the Luzerne County Council members have complete access to that financial data on that system, which isn't there. And really get a handle on where the money is going.
That's funny you brought that up because that same issue was brought up at the Lackawanna Home Rule Study Commission, Michael, this past week. So once again, it's people that are trying to make a change, trying to look behind that curtain and being stonewalled. And that's part of the problem.
And that's where the Wizard of Oz, the man behind the curtain, is. The man behind the curtain's everywhere.
Don't get us going. That's all we need is more ideas. The wizard behind the curtain. But Michael, what happened this past week too is this argument between Brzezinski and Haas was right on the front pages of the Times Leader, including the picture, by the way, from the Independent Gazette, but they forgot to put that in there. John DiLiberto went and covered the Kathy Dobash getting sworn in, and lo and behold, it was our picture that was on the front page. But that was just a mistake that they made, but we all make those mistakes.
I did send who took the picture.
You did, I know, right.
But I was delighted to see it there.
Yeah,
and,
front page.
I did have my own ceremony with Justice Stevens in the morning.
Right. What happened with that, Kathy? Was did something happen
here's
afterwards?
The story.
Yeah.
The story is basically I wasn't really mailed or given on paper any document telling me the time, date of the ceremony, or the time and date of the reorganization meeting. You'd think there would have been some type of transition and a formal invite sent to both myself and Eileen Sorokas. Well, that wasn't done, but an email was sent out by clerk to council to the county council members at the time and a few choice people at the courthouse of all that information. So I found out because Mr. Brzezinski forwarded that email to me, and I said, really? News to me. But I wanted a personal ceremony anyhow.
That was great.
I was emotional. I literally, as I was taking the oath, a tear started going down my cheek. I didn't expect it. I just got choked up.
Right. Well, this means a lot to you, and I know you're taking this very personally. I mean, we have spoken since you've been elected, and you want. I know for a fact that what you want to do is really. You're in this for the people. You're not looking at this as no stepping stone. You could care less. I mean, a matter of fact, typically you work in a warehouse.
A warehouse, night shift.
At night shifts. Mm-hmm. And you didn't do it last night, but typically you would, if you came into the studio, you're coming right in from work. Mm-hmm. And that's your job. That's what you're doing. That's how you keep the fires burning in your household. And you're not looking at this county council as anything but to make it better. And Michael, I think that's what makes it so appealing, what has happened here in Luzerne County. People like Kathy Dobash that are not connected with these two parties. You broke through.
I did break through, and I still think people are in disbelief that I won. I feel a big burden on my shoulders. I'm asking for information. I'm getting some. I want to do the right thing. But
and you will. We know it. You are going to do the right thing, and you're going to keep not only our listeners informed, but certainly at the Independent Gazette. You're on the other. You're all over the place already, and people are starting to look at you as the one that they can go to get the real answer. Like a Mr. Brzezinski also. Michael, we've known that. I mean, yeah. Ed, he just tells you the way it is, man. If you don't like it, too bad.
Well, you need to invite him. And have him here.
Oh, Ed's been on the show. He hasn't been in studio, but we'll get him. We'll bring him in too. Maybe one day we'll bring them both in, Michael.
I was just say, Kathy, pick him up on the way in.
That would be great. That would be yeah. That's
talking
cool.
about a formal letter. I want to throw this out there real quick. We were at once again the study commission for Lackawanna, and they were approving the bills, Michael. They had approved the bills to get paid. And I'm listening to this, and what came up was the Scranton Times, because they're the only paper in town to date, they need to, print those legal notices. And they weren't paid, I guess. And that was a question why Lackawanna County hadn't paid the Times for a few months. But they were refusing to put any of these legal notices in the paper until they were paid, and that needed to be paid directly out of Chuck Volpe's personal pocket, just to make sure that the legal notices got out in town so that these commission meetings would be legitimate. What do you think about that? I know once we reach the point, if it comes to the point, I can't even imagine not putting legal notices in the paper because we would not have gotten paid from the counties and throwing this whole thing upside down. So I was a little dismayed that the Scranton Times would have refused to print these notices, which would have huge ramifications to what's going on with these meetings.
Well, the reality is, Lou, that we look at Luzerne County, we look at Lackawanna County, and the poor government that we've seen from both. But this is not just Luzerne and Lackawanna County. This is nationwide. And as X talked about earlier, that the folks that we see in government aren't these Einsteins. They're like you and me. There's no reason to be intimidated by them. There's no reason. In fact, they should be intimidated by you, the people, because we're the ones that really should be in charge here. And Luzerne County was an example of that by getting Kathy in, by voting overwhelmingly to get her into county council. And I really think that has a lot to do, Lou. We go right back to, first of all, Kathy's hard and extraordinary work that she's done, and a free and independent press through the Gazette. So I think the two combination is really why we are where we are today, with Kathy and Mr. Brzezinski just teaming up for what's right.
So congratulations, Kathy. Thanks for coming in today. Michael, we have to take a quick break. We're down to the last 10 minutes. We'll be gone for a minute or so here. We'll be back to finish up.
So wake me up when it's all over, when I'm wiser and I'm older. All this time I was finding myself and I didn't know I was lost. So
wake me up. Michael, that is our goal, really. We need to wake everybody up, and that includes our politicians, which goes back to what we started this whole show with. asking about our debt. Nothing changes once again until we have a free and independent press and free and equal elections. We're encouraging people to get on board with SB 195. You did mention Senator Fulmer, Michael. I called everybody on that list. People locally that are on the government committee here is Senator Udicek. He is also a co-sponsor. So, as much as we have to ask Senator Baker, how does she get it out of committee? I think this is real important. We're asking people especially people within their districts, to call these senators and start putting pressure on and say, wait a minute, nothing changes until we have free and equal elections, because we want more people like Kathy Dobash's to get in office. Now, they could either do it through the primaries, they could do it through the two parties, but certainly there's an awful lot of people that are out there that don't have that access, and if they were able to get on the ballot, we'd be able to get more people in office that truly care about their local government.
You're right, and I look at, for example, you're talking local, but I look at Gary Johnson, who looks like he might be making another run for the presidential candidate. He's coming to Texas to speak, as you know, and I just look, and maybe one of the things is, besides the Walking Eagle Award, Lou, we should have the wizard behind the curtain. Maybe we've started something.
That's a good idea.
But but it really, really, really is important that our listeners begin to realize who the players are. And I look at Senator Smucker. And Lou, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Senator Smucker is a Republican. Am I correct?
It is, and that's the deal. Okay, so we got Smucker, that's the Republican. And this went to what Gary had talked about last week. It's just a lot of our representatives know that they could co-sponsor bills. They're not going to go anywhere. And then they could come back and say, you see, I'm with you guys. Well, that's not good enough. And that's what we ask, and what we're starting to ask people like Senator Baker to go to Smucker and say, wait a minute here. You know what? I'm starting to get pressure from my constituents that they don't like this. We have to have free and equal elections. One of the things I threw out there, Michael, the other day was, how about this? Anybody that's listening there, if you want to be part of the primary, you need to join the Libertarian Party. How's that?
Right.
How does anybody listening to what we're saying today, from here on out, unless you join the Libertarian Party, you can't vote in the primary? What do you think about that? Yep. Or maybe the Green Party. How about the Green Party? How about you have to join? Everybody needs to join the Green Party to do that. And then the other thing I threw out, Michael, I'm sorry, I'm going to let you in here. The other thing is this. The Libertarian Party has a convention in February. That's how we choose our candidates. How about I send you the bill? Hey, Kathy, how about I send Luzerne County the bill for the Libertarian Convention so that you could pay us to pick the candidates? Because you know what? That's what Republicans and Democrats do to anybody that's a true independent out there. Think about that.
Yeah, but running for office, see, I was encouraged by people to just start knocking on doors. Just run for inspector of elections. Just talk to people. And then I started doing more. And it does take self-confidence and some time, but I did it.
You did it, right?
I did it.
And once again, there's other people out there that might do it, but when you start running into roadblocks because perhaps you can't get...
money's a roadblock.
Money is a huge roadblock, Michael, which is one of the reasons why, of course, we don't believe that the legislature should be downsized, because it would take more money to get into office. The bigger the district, the more money it takes.
Well, it's ridiculous what is spent in advertising to campaign, and that's where the corruption starts. We need to change the way we campaign.
Michael, I think I cut you off two or three times there. I'm sorry, too. Go ahead, Michael.
No, not at all. But, one of the things I think of Senator Smucker, and, maybe Senator Smucker might listen to about 3 or 4 busloads of people coming to his office at one time. Maybe Senator Smucker needs to realize the heat that the people of Pennsylvania could put on him. And we can do it through calling our senators, but, maybe we need more extreme situations. But, folks like Smucker really, really make me sick. Because here's a guy who will sit up there acting, and where does one man get so much power that he decides which laws are going to be voted on? And it's us, the people, that have to make sure we put that pressure on. And I'm encouraging everyone who's listening to us today, call up Senator Smucker's office on Monday.
Or call Senator Baker, because she is a Republican, and she could get into his office and say, "Wait a minute, you're giving us a bad name up here in Northeast Pennsylvania. I don't want to be associated with what you are doing. Just bring it to the floor," because everybody knows. If this bill went to the floor, Michael, and certainly Senator Fulmer said, who is not going to vote for supporting the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, which calls for free and equal elections? So what they do is they hide behind these chairs, which is so important why we had to change the chairs on Luzerne County Commission, because they do have this power to what comes up and what the agenda is going to be.
And this is why we need to make those calls. And it's just a few minutes out of your day. Just keep in lieu. Maybe we could post that up on our website. His direct number.
Oh, yes.
We're able to do that.
But once again, like Gary had said, that it's important that we do locally here. Get a hold of your DCHAC, even though he's a Democrat, but he is on that committee. Yeah. So once they start getting some phone calls, perhaps, and saying, "Wait a minute. I'm starting to get these calls. Why am I getting calls on this thing?" We better take a look at it, because people are looking at it. Yikes, Michael, we're done.
Yow.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Michael. You got it. Folks, have a great weekend. You finish up. God bless everybody. Have a great weekend.